My name is Gerald Ahnert. In 1970, I got interested. I was on a job out here in the Butterfield Overland Trail, and I've been researching it for 53 years. And this stage station here, the genesis of it actually is started with, this had only been in the United States for 2 years, since the Gadsden Purchase of 1854. Now they got established forts. So when nothing was here, here comes a company of dragoons from Nottoway, and to establish Fort Buchanan south of Tucson. And they were the ones who discovered that spring right up there in that canyon. And that's why it's called Dragoon Springs. And then a couple years later, the reason for this station being here, the U.S. government gave the contract to John Butterfield, and he established this as one of the 26 stations in Arizona. There were 175 total all the way across, but this was the last of the 10 fortified stage stations, the farthest one west. Reason being, it was on the Northwest Apache raiding trail into Mexico, so they needed a fortified stage station. Now, it's a pretty interesting story when they built this. Now, each section in a 2,700-mile trail, the longest stagecoach line in the world, they had 8 divisions. In charge of this division was William Buckley. Where his station, where he was stationed, was in Tucson, but he had to go through here. Each superintendent was in charge of building the stations on their route. So he came here. Now, he was from Watertown, New York, like many of the employees. They were upstate New Yorkers, just like John Butterfield. He came here with a crew to build this. Silas St. John, another fellow named Cunningham, Lang, and Burr. Burr was his uncle, his older uncle from Watertown, New York. Now, they came here to build this station along with 3 Mexican laborers. They were from Sonora. And while they had to hurry. This was September, and that line had to start service in September 15th, that month in 1858. And they were hurrying. They got the walls put up here. Now the walls here, this was the open corral. This was open. It was high. They were 8 feet high, these walls. And there were 3 rooms right there. That's where they slept. That's Silas St. John's room, and Lang and Cunningham slept there. They just finished getting the walls up, and the thatched roof wasn't put on yet. So they left behind Silas St. John, Cunningham, Lang, and Burr, and the 3 Mexican laborers to finish thatching that roof. And that was on September 8th, 1858. Now you have to remember, this 400-mile trail through Arizona, there was not one settlement on it. This was the true frontier. There was only one, Tucson, which went back to 1776, the Spaniards. Otherwise, this was the extreme of the frontier on the entire trail. Now, that crew goes off to where Benson is now, leaving them behind. Now, they went to bed. And shortly after midnight on September 9th, 1858, Silas St. John's sleeping there, and he hears a low whistle. That was the signal for the massacre. The 3 Mexican laborers wanted to do them in, grab the animals and what they could, and head to Sonora. And he heard the noise. He jumps out. That's his room right there. In that doorway, now they came to get him. They had sledgehammers and an axe, or big sledges, you know, and that's what they crushed the skulls of the other employees. And he's got no weapon. This, in the annals of Old West history, is one of the most spectacular survival stories in the annals, I will tell you. No weapon he had. And he was 24 years old, and they start swinging at him. He pars one blow, gets a big cut. That cut right through his arm, and it was hanging. He parred another blow, and it got him in the hip. During that massacre, when Silas St. John was laying there, he laid there for 7 days before they sent to Fort Buchanan to get the military surgeon, his name was Irwin, to come out here to take care of him. Now, he got here 2 days later. It was 9 days that guy laid there. You know what saved him? Maggots. They were in his wounds and kept the wounds clean. That's what saved him. But, you know, during the time he laid there, he said the mules were baying so loud for lack of water, he managed to drag himself up and let those mules out. And they went up to the spring, but one stayed behind. He said it was a mule he had a special attachment to. That mule stayed right beside him. Well, so on the 9th day, they get here with a surgeon. And they laid him on bags of corn and whatever supplies they had there as an operating table and cut off his arm right there. Now, the 2 of the ones that were massacred died together. And they buried them in one, probably in one of these rock cairns, under one of them. But there's so much ambiguity, we are not exactly sure. But it's here in this vicinity. Now, the other one died a couple days later. So 2 were in one grave they buried, and 1 in the other. And when they amputated his arm, they took him in a buckboard to Fort Buchanan to recover. And in 25 days after they cut his arm off, he was riding a horse. Now that's one tough dude. You know, it's one of these great stories of survival in the Old West. It rises to the top of surviving one of these massacres. But now when they cut off his arm, he stated that, you know, there's a drawing made by H.C. Grosvenor here in 1860 of this station. He shows 2 graves. The other 2 are from the Confederate Apache engagement. Should I say that? Yeah, there, like I said, his arm is buried between one. But you know something? There's another body part that may be buried here. Probably here because this is considered a cemetery. I found a reference just a couple of years ago that just over on the right there, they found a severed head. And it was a white man. They said he had good teeth. So they figured, you know, he came from a good environment. And they don't know what it was all about. Now, the Apache were masters of psychological warfare, too. And it may have been from them as a warning to the, to the people in the stage. They don't know. It's one of those mysteries. But the thing about these 4 rock cairns that are supposed to cover graves, we have a series of photos from 1898 to 1970, when I took a photo here in 1970. And the Conklings were here. Now, they were the ones who came through here from 1929 to 1933 and wrote, there are 3 huge volumes that were published in 1947 by the Arthur H. Clarke Company. Now, they did the pioneering effort for this trail that we all build on. From their information. They were here in 1929 and took various pictures here, you know. And so we have that too. Now Doug, myself, and Bob Nielsen have stood here with those and looked at those rock cairns. They were constantly in flux. You know, they don't look the same. They've been, for various reasons, they've been unconstructed, reconstructed. In 1967, there was a desecration report that the front 2 were uncovered and the rocks strewn about, and then reconstructed. So there you go. That Silas St. John survived that massacre. 3 of the Butterfield employees during that massacre are buried here. And during the 1862, there's a Confederate was buried here, and a Mexican-American drover. That's the 5 bodies buried here. That is definitive. Anything else is speculation. But there's also an arm and a head.